I'll start by saying my name is Nancy Fulton. I currently run events for more than 50,000 entertainment industry pros. And in tonight's event, we're going to be talking about the nuts and bolts and costs of virtual production. This is an important event because virtual production is taking over Hollywood in the same way that internet distribution took over Hollywood, and the same way that videotape and later digital recording took over Hollywood in preference to shooting on celluloid. So this is an incredibly important event. I guarantee you that if you're going to be working in the entertainment industry in the months and years ahead, you will be using virtual production to shoot your projects. And by the time we get done with this event, I think you'll have a very good understanding as to why that actually is true. So with that in mind, I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this teeny little window because I can't think when it's on. Let's see. And I'm going to go ahead and migrate over to the first slide. So as we get started, the first thing I want to talk about is why virtual production is actually important to you. Disney's Mandalorian and hundreds of other TV series and films are currently being shot with sort of the 21st century version of green screen, which is called virtual production. So in this workshop, you're going to learn what virtual production is, the actual equipment that's involved in creating it, and why it's such an incredible time and money saver. You're going to learn why it's been widely adopted throughout the entertainment industry, not just in the United States, but worldwide. And I put some links in the documentation that I sent out and I'll be turning this into a workbook and making it available to VIP Pro subscribers. So you'll have the links that I've put below, but there's a huge amount of adoption of this technology. Netflix, Amazon, Disney, Warner Brothers, and then smaller producers worldwide are using this technology, and they're adopting it wholesale. And it's because it's incredibly cost effective and because it allows you to shoot projects which would otherwise be impossible. It's a huge change. It's a sea change in the entertainment industry. And some people might think that especially if you've been reading media reports on virtual production and you've been sort of paying attention to what's in the press, you may think that it's so expensive that it actually makes it impossible for you to use because it costs too much. Giant LED screens and those kinds of things, huge sound stages, those kinds of things you might not be able to afford. The truth is it actually favors the little guy. It actually favors the independent producer of film and television. So you'll be learning about why that's the case. Now, we're just going to sort of drop into a picture. And you can see that this is, a relatively small, straightforward image, but it has all of the elements of virtual production at work. If you look on the left side of the screen where it says man on green screen, you can see that you've got a digital camera that's just like I think it's a Blackmagic Ursa, that's pointed at a guy standing on a green screen stage. If you look on the left side of the screen, you'll see an arrow that points to a computer that shows there's like some little lights inside. And that computer is taking the man on the green screen and it's placing it inside the three-dimensional world. So you can imagine, if you close your eyes, you can sort of imagine it as taking a person on a plane of glass and actually sticking it inside a three-dimensional universe or three-dimensional world. And then if you think about it, you can sort of look at that man. If you had a little camera, you could look at that man from any direction inside the three-dimensional world. We'll talk a little bit more about how things are stitched together and how you make it so it looks like the man is actually in the world from any direction. But suffice to say, you've got a man on a green screen, you've got a computer that has a three-dimensional world, and you are placing the man on the green screen, the image, the footage that's coming in, basically inside a little rectangle that's inside the three-dimensional world. Now, if you look at the image that's at the back of the screen, here in the middle, what you can see is sort of a man, and behind him is a three-dimensional snowy world and what looks sort of like it could possibly be a spaceship. Now, here's the interesting thing. This is not just a background. The three-dimensional environment that's behind this particular guy, that man could walk out that door and walk, the 2 miles to this mountain in the snow, And this camera, if the stage were big enough, the camera could literally follow that guy all the way to the mountain and into the mountain range and into a cave that was in the mountains. So this is a fully immersive three-dimensional reality that this actor on a green screen can walk around. The only limit to how deep and how wide and how far you can go in this virtual world is how big your green screen environment is, right? If you had a green screen environment as large as a football field, you could have a camera follow that actor through a spaceship that was as large as a football field. So what sets this apart, what sets virtual production apart from normal green screen, is the fact that the three-dimensional environments that you are looking at are they're full 3D worlds that your characters can actually walk around in. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and talk a little bit about the technology that we're using in this particular universe. The first thing we're going to talk about is camera tracking. Camera tracking, if there's a thing that you mount onto the top of your camera in the real world that looks, in this particular example, Moses looks up at little reflective spots that are pasted upon the ceiling. And they could also alternatively be pasted on a net that's hung over your shooting stage. The Moses, as you move your camera around, keeps track of the spots, and based upon the location of the spots, figures out where it is in three-dimensional space. That means when you move the camera down, or when you move the camera up, or when you tilt it left or right, it automatically, it actually knows about that change. It knows where it's been moved to. And the Moses camera, this three-dimensional, this real camera in the real world, connects to a digital camera inside the three-dimensional environment, so that any changes to the location of this particular camera automatically update the camera that's in the digital world. What this means is that if the Moses camera looks at your character from the front, then, and there's imagine a pane of glass that's actually pasted inside the three-dimensional world, the view, you have a digital camera that matches up with the Moses camera that ensures what's behind the character on green screen that's inside the virtual environment is an accurate reflection of what would be behind that character in the real world. So I mentioned to you that there's two versions of these camera tracking systems, and one of them is called Moses, and which is this one, and it's got this camera which is dedicated to looking up. And if there's the alternative is one called in-cam, which is one which it's basically the same thing. It's got like a box, just like it's got a box that's actually attached to the top of the camera or somewhere on the camera. And then it's got these eyes that are looking for digital spots, whether they're on the ceiling, or in some cases with in-cam, you might decide instead of using spots, you might use a registration card. Or actually in-cam can actually use any geometry that happens to be on your set. So it may sometimes, if you've got geometry on your set, instead of having to put spots on, the software is sort of smart enough to see all those little corners and all those little recognizable vertices on your set, and it uses that for camera tracking instead of using spots that are stuck on the ceiling. But regardless, what you need to know is that when you're doing virtual production, you almost always need to have a camera tracking system which matches the digital the movement of the real world camera with the movement of a camera that's in the digital environment. For all intents and purposes, the actor on the green screen is inside the digital world, and you're really limited only by the size of the green screen that you're working on. And again, we're going to be talking about LED screens in a moment. So if we take a look at the image that's currently on this screen, this character, this actor, they've illuminated him they have lights on the set that are, in this particular case, kind of a yellowy light. And he is literally sitting on a green screen prop that you can't see. And everything else in the scene is rendered by the 3D rendering application, the 3D modeling environment that he's in. It's incredibly flexible, and you can see how it would save a lot of money, because almost anything that you can possibly imagine, any world you can envision, you can put a character inside and you can render. The most important thing is that when you render, you're rendering in real time. So it's not like in the old days when you were shooting Lord of the Rings or Avatar, where you might shoot over a period of months or years, and then you would um, spend months or years um, compositing and doing a whole bunch of post processing. All of this happens in real time because the rendering engines that they're using, the tools that they're using to create the digital environments, are the same gaming engines that your children are using when they're playing Call of Duty or when they're playing any of the other 100 games that you see them play all of the time. Those gaming engines render um, 4K and even higher resolution images at, you know, 30, 60, 120 frames per second. They're very, very, very fast rendering engines. The system that's most commonly being used at the moment is one called the Unreal Engine, which is entirely free for you to use in um, producing film and television. And you can buy environments that you want to shoot in, or you can pay people to create environments for you very, very, very cost effectively. And we'll sort of talk more about that at the end. So I think if you understand that it's fast, it's very cost effective, doesn't require a huge quantity of equipment, and it's something that is robust. I mean, it's not, you know, it's people do this. You can shoot content day in and day out. You can, it's even faster than shooting in the real world, specifically because when I want to load a set, I'm really just loading a computer file, and I'm, you know, I might screw around with it for a little bit and place the digital camera in the environment where, you know, so it shows the right background and, you know, places the three-dimensional, places the actor on green screen in the correct place in the digital house. But I don't have to worry about, um, and there's so many things I don't have to worry about. I'm not traveling to a location. Lighting is relatively straightforward. It's just it's an incredibly straightforward process when compared to the normal processes that you have to do when you're producing film. I'm not saying there aren't complexities to it. I'm not saying there's not stuff to learn, but I'm saying that it's it's being widely adopted because it's relatively straightforward. So as we talk about the Unreal Engine, when you get a chance, you might want to just go ahead and go to Google at some point in the future. Google the Unreal Engine, and you can go ahead and take a look at some of the computer images that people use it to create. You'll be shocked at how photorealistic they are and how large the environments are. If you look at this image right here, this is a fully three-dimensional image. That girl's not even real, and the mountains that are way over here, they could be, as far as the computer is concerned, literally miles away. It could literally accurately be rendering exactly what it should be if those mountains are 2 or 3 miles away. Inside the digital world, they might well be 2 or 3 miles away. And this temple on the left could be, you know, 10 miles deep. The environments can be very, very large, and they render very, very, very quickly. And these solutions are very cost effective. For $300,000 thereabouts, you can fully own a 2-camera solution suitable for shooting both high-value television series and film projects, and you can use that technology to produce projects on any green screen. And we're going to be talking about LED screens in a moment. One of the sexiest things in Hollywood, and the way that people are actually learning about virtual production, is because they're seeing all these giant screens that are being used on projects like The Mandalorian. But you do not have to use giant LED screens in order to shoot using virtual production. And in fact, there are good reasons not to, which we'll be talking about in a moment. Not that I hate LED screens. I'm just letting you know that it's actually kind of harder to shoot on LED screens than it is to shoot using the standard green screen technology. And we'll talk about why in a little bit. Now let's talk about sort of where you save money using these technologies. The first thing is you save money because location scouting and rental are all but eliminated. It might be the case, actually, that you rent the green screen studio that you're going to shoot at. And if you expected that to cost, I'll talk about costs later on, but that's the cost of renting even fairly large green screen environments is very cost effective. Certainly much less expensive than actually taking a whole crew out to a real live location, and certainly much less expensive than renting a soundstage and actually building a house in it. So location scouting and rental are all but eliminated. When you go shopping for environments, you're going shopping online, and or you're paying people to create 3D models for you. Production design and art design is fully digital, and you have hundreds of thousands of pre-created environments that you can buy and modify, and you've got millions of props you can add scenes to and change as required. Construction and set dressing has all been eliminated because you're basically loading digital environments on the computer. Now, you may decide to have actors sit at a real table, and you may decide to give them a prop gun to hold, and you may decide to make them drink from a real coffee cup. But most environments are fully digital or very, very digital. And you only put in, usually you're only putting in actual geometry when you want the actor to touch it. Because, to some degree, you want to be able to make it so the actor can actually move things around. And there are ways to move digital objects around if you feel like it. Like if you want an actor to pick up in a science fiction story, you want him to pick up a glowing sword. There's ways to handle that particular issue, but we'll set that aside until later. So usually when you're having an actor handle a prop, it's a prop that is an actual real world prop. Load in and load out are all but eliminated if you're actually shooting most of your project inside a using three-dimensional environments that you're loading onto your computer for the most part. You go into a three-dimensional green screen soundstage and you stay there until it's done, and then you take all your stuff and you go home. It is not the case that you're moving from place to place to place to place every single day. Airfare, hotels, and travel are almost eliminated unless you plan to take your whole project to a state that has big green screens and gives you big rebates. Then you might decide to, obviously you'll be paying for your cast and your crew to go shoot over there. But generally speaking, there's really great green screens here in Los Angeles. You're probably one of the best places in the world to do virtual production because there's great stages and all the cast and all the crew are here. Grip, electrical, sound, and VFX, those budgets are significantly cut because you're shooting on a soundstage. So most of the time you have sort of house power. And so you have fewer people involved in that. Usually your grips and all of those folks are, you have so much more that you can rely on, and you're working in such a confined space, just the green screen environment. You really don't have to have nearly as many people doing those traditional jobs or those normal jobs as you normally have. So you can really cut the size of your crews substantially. When I say that you can eliminate or virtually eliminate virtual effects or VFX, the reason I'm saying that is because a lot of things are actually done inside the Unreal Engine, inside the digital environment that you create. If I want to be able to have lightning strike, Moses, takes his cane or takes his staff and strikes the ground and lightning flashes, I can do that entirely inside the Unreal Engine in real time. I don't need to have a VFX team do it after the fact or add it later. I can literally have it happen in real time because the Unreal Engine, it's a gaming platform. And as you know, if you watch kids play video game, there's constantly lightning happening. There's constantly things flying around the screen. There's constantly, there's no special effect that happens that happens on any film you've ever seen that doesn't happen inside the real Unreal Engine as part of some game or another. So there's an infinite quantity of special effects you can achieve very, very quickly, and they're all done in real time. They're not done after the fact. Stunts costs are significantly reduced because you can create digital duplicates of characters when you want them to die or fall or jump or to do the kind of things you might normally do with wire work with real live actors. So if you depending on how real you need to make the character, if you want to, you can take an actor and take him to a location where they'll scan him in 3 dimensions and they'll make a duplicate of him. They'll make a digital duplicate of the actor, and you can scan him in costume. So you have a digital version of the character that you can fully animate inside the Unreal Engine. So when he needs to do stuff like fight or fall down or anything that you need to have happen to that guy, you can have his head ripped off. And those things can actually be done inside the Unreal Engine. If you prefer, you can always use practical props if that's your preference. You're not eliminated from doing those things or practical stunts, but you're not obligated to use them anymore. So you can choose judiciously when you want to pay for stunt people and how much you want to pay for stunt people. And when you want to use real people to do work, and when you want to use stunt work, or when you want to actually have the characters be performed by digital characters. Finally, post-production is faster because usually your scenes are composited in real time. Now, I want to stop here for just a second. So when you're shooting for television, normally you're creating 4K output. And when you're shooting with the Unreal Engine and you have the camera matching tools that we talked about, and your nice Blackmagic Ursa camera, etc. And you're shooting in, uh, you've got the Unreal Engine and you're loading the environment in the Unreal Engine. Shooting for television, it's very straightforward. It's all done in real time, and your final outputs, your content's pretty close to final output when you get done with it. There's not a lot of post processing that has to happen as a rule, and especially as time goes by, you get better and better using the technology. You just get pretty final content. If you decide that you want to shoot a film and you want to do the film for theatrical release, such that you're going to have huge screens, you want to project it on 40-foot screens. In that particular case, what you would normally do is you would shoot the film exactly as I've currently described, and then I haven't mentioned to you previously, but it turns out that the movement of the camera can be recorded such that every move that you make with the camera and every composite that gets done, you can record the location of the camera, and what was on the digital actor on green screen was doing at that moment. What you can then do is tell the computer to go back and re-render the backgrounds behind the actors at higher resolution, at full film quality resolution. Now, this process, the second post-processing step, does take time, but it's relatively fast and it's relatively programmatic, because really what you're doing is just re-rendering the digital backgrounds, right? And you would be shooting your actor on green screen at the final resolution, and then to save time on set, you would be rendering the backgrounds at only 4K, and then what you would be doing is rendering the final backgrounds at higher resolution after the fact. And it just takes time. And in fact, AWS actually has rendering workstations that you can, if you decide you're really in a hurry, you can actually have them use these giant workstation farms, rendering farms, to render those backgrounds. Or you can just use the technology that you use to shoot your film to render those backgrounds. But my point is, the only reason I mention it is you only need to think about that when you're shooting something that is going to be for theatrical release, and it has to have really high resolution backgrounds. If you're shooting for television series, or you're shooting uh, films made for television, movies made for TV, then you only want it to be 4K, then you don't have a problem. And most content is actually shot at those resolutions. So now that's where you're saving all the money, and that's why this technology is being widely adopted. When you talk about development, that's the stage of the process before you have funding for your project. It's when you are figuring out how much the project is going to shoot, and you're attaching your key cast and your key crew, and you're looking around for distribution so that you can you can get minimum guarantees if at all possible, and you're looking around for funding from investors. Generally speaking, you're going to go online and you're going to look for the 3D locations that you want to put in your film, right? And you're going to look for you're either going to make those you're either going to find those environments and customize them because they're available in the Unreal Engine marketplace, or other libraries of models that you can purchase, or you are going to go ahead and pay some guy to make them for you if they happen to be, you don't just need any apartment, you need a very specific looking apartment. Or if you want to set something in the White House, you can probably buy the White House, several different versions of the White House, three-dimensional environments. If you want to do something that's very custom to your particular project, and it's, you might decide to go ahead and pay somebody to create this particular environment or set that you need. Now, I want to mention that the Unreal Engine marketplace, if you look at their terms and conditions, you'll see that they have no royalty fees for film or TV use of their thousands of environments. So when you buy an environment off the Unreal Engine, it's automatically licensed for linear media creation. Linear media means not interactive. So film and TV are not interactive. You sit, you watch, you don't change anything or move anything around while you're watching, unlike a video game. So you can use their environments for film and television. You just buy the model and then you can use it. The next thing you do is you find the green screen stage you want to shoot on. The bigger the stage, the farther your actors can run, jump, fall, etc. And so big screens, big environments are good. You're going to create, based upon those things that you found, you're going to go ahead and create a shooting schedule that minimizes the number of days you require from the high value actors. So as you know, when you're budgeting a film project or a TV project, you usually have to sort of think about, okay, what's the most expensive thing that is going to be in this environment? Is it renting this very expensive soundstage or this very expensive uh, building that I want, this front entrance or whatever. I need to, that's the most expensive thing. I've got to minimize my time on that particular set. I've got to shoot as much as I can on that set so that I minimize that particular cost. Or am I shooting with a very expensive actor? Well, the thing is, really shooting on green screen, it's pretty much all environments are equally cost effective. So that means that you really just have to focus on who's the most expensive actor you're putting in your project, and you shoot all of his scenes first. And that sort of gets him off his work done and minimizes the cost you're spending on him, and then you're going to go ahead and spend the rest of your time shooting the scenes that have the lower cost actors. uh, so your objective in creating the shooting schedule so that you can create a low cost budget is to go ahead and focus on how to reduce costs by minimizing the time required from your most expensive actors. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to go attach your key crew, your line producer, director, first AD, DP, camera operators, blah, blah, blah. You're going to add a virtual production supervisor and 2 to 6 virtual production techs, depending upon the complexity of your shoot and the stunts and so forth. Now, when you're shooting on virtual production, you need to know that, generally speaking, you need to have you're going to have computer operators. The computer operators are the ones that are going to load the set. So if you've got a 2-camera shoot, you're going to need at least 2 people to load up stuff on the cameras. And then you probably want to have 1 more per camera to go screw around with the uh, camera matching stuff. And you might as well go ahead and get 2 of those guys. So you usually end up with 2 to 4 people on set that's just sort of wrangling the computer system so that you can load scenes and you can render scenes and make sure the output is correct when it's going out to video. Usually you're going to have a virtual production supervisor, and he's the guy who's just going to make sure that all the compositing is going the way it's supposed to, and that he's going to work with the DP and the director to make sure they get all the right shots, and the fact that the Unreal Engine's got what it's supposed to have in the background, and determine what resolution things are. Because I did not focus on the fact that the digital camera that you shoot on, the one that has the camera matching on it in the real world, it also keeps track of focus and depth of field. So it may be the case you want the actor to be very clear, but you want the background to be very blurry. But the interesting thing is that when you make the changes to the focus in the real world camera, the focus and the depth of field and so forth on the digital camera inside the Unreal Engine also updates. So your virtual production supervisor, you have one of those guys so that they can sort of wrangle all the technology to make sure that you're getting exactly the output that you want on set. So that is sort of the one increase in cost. So when you actually create your budget, the one that you're going to use to get funding and the one that you're going to use to rely on as you're shooting your project, you can see how your costs are significantly reduced because you're not wandering around the countryside trying to figure out, where can I find this particular farmhouse in, Georgia? Or let's say I want to shoot in New Orleans and I need a modern office building for scenes, 1, 10, and 15, and I need a bathhouse for scenes 5 and 6, and I need a graveyard for scenes 7 and 10, right? You're not wandering around the countryside or shopping or scouting for those locations. You're literally sitting on your computer shopping for them. So all of this saves a great deal of production time, of development time. So that's sort of the fundamentals of where you save money when it comes to development. How do you save money in pre-production? Once you actually have the funding, cast, crew, and script, and you begin actually purchasing and customizing and creating the 3-dimensional environments you need for your project, your 3D modelers, your art director, your production designer, your director, your virtual production supervisor, they're pretty much all working online. They don't have to go anywhere. You can literally be throwing these files back and forth to one another, or doing Zoom conferences where you actually share what the environments are and pick the camera positions in the digital world, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All of these, and figure out how the stunts are going to work. You can literally do all of that kind of pre-production with nobody being in the same place. It could well be the case that you're hiring your 3-dimensional modelers from Asia, or from India, or from Pakistan, or from anywhere in the world, or you could choose to hire ones that work locally if you prefer. Generally, you're going to be looking at high-res images of your environments on your computer. But I mentioned in passing that the Unreal Engine is perfectly capable of letting you put on goggles and walk around inside a three-dimensional environment, which is kind of an interesting thing. It may help you find new camera positions and new shooting options that you would not have otherwise considered. By the time you're done, you usually have pretty much, you know how you always think, well, I really wish I could storyboard this film. By the time you're done, you pretty much have storyboarded your film. You know exactly what environment you're going to be loading, what the camera positions are for each shot, and because when you get to the set, you're literally just going to be loading the environment, and recording the actors, and doing the compositing and sending out the final output. So before you even hit set, you've actually created you've actually created all of the digital environments, and you've set up all the camera shots, and you've done it's just an incredibly fast process. You understand completely what the film's going to look like. You've solved a lot of the production problems, during pre-production. It's so in a way it's very, front loaded. By the time you're actually shooting, a lot of the work is done. When you're actually during production, once you get to the green screen stage, you're setting up the digital village. You're basically taking all the computer equipment and sticking it in a particular corner, and you're ensuring that the camera matching is working, and you're ensuring that the green screen stuff is right. And then when you actually start shooting shots, you're basically just matching the lighting in on the three-dimensional world with the lighting on the set, or vice versa, right? If you have people walking through a jungle in the digital world, you know, like your live actors are theoretically walking through a jungle, then you're going to want to make it so the in the real world environment, you've got the right light being projected down onto them, which might be, um, uh, green light or, dappled light, being projected on them using gels or using, gobos or any of the other techniques we use for lighting. Now I'm going to pause and mention here that one way that you can use LED screens is you can actually use them to do lighting. So it could be the case that you actually, get what's supposed to be above your actors inside the Unreal Engine, what's supposed to be above the actors inside the three-dimensional environment, and you render an image of that or a video of that, and you get a live feed, and you literally project that onto a screen that's over their heads, and it can actually project those colors on down to them. And in fact, when you are shooting on giant LED screens, one of the largest advantages that you get, aside from the fact that it looks really cool to walk onto a set with, that's got giant environments on it, is that the lighting that's striking your actors is the giant LED screens project a lot of light, and they project it at your actors, and that makes them actually match the background that they're in. So if you were using, one reason to use giant LED screens, if you can afford them, is that it makes lighting really much, much easier. But again, it's not necessary. You can also mimic the lighting using standard lighting techniques as well. When you start shooting, you basically load the environment up, get the actors to do their stuff on the green screen, and it gets fed into the computer, gets composited, and turns into the video output that you need. Your director is usually sitting on set, and he's looking at a screen that shows the final output, and he's directing the actors who are on the stage, right? So the director's actually watching the final footage, and he can direct the actors based upon what he's seen. And you can also tell if there have to be changes made to the environment, like he wants a coffee table moved, or he wants a chair deleted, or he wants to be able to have, the background. Let's say it's in a house, and there's, it's nighttime outside the window. He decides, you know what, I want to make this a day scene. Actually, they can change the lighting on literally inside the 3D model in a matter of minutes, and he can have exactly the set that he wants loaded in real time and changed in real time. It's very, very, very fast. So I want to talk, now's probably a good time to talk about LED screens. So when you actually go online and you Google, virtual production, they're going to start talking about, you'll see all kinds of articles talking about the giant LED screens, and they're wonderful. They are incredibly high resolution, and they're usually created with a series of panels. So you'll get like you'll get like 1 meter squares, and you'll sort of, if you need like a 10 meter, which is to say every meter is 3 feet. So a 30-foot stage, you know, would be like 10 meters, right? So a 10-meter stage by a, if you want it to be 9 feet tall, that would be 3 meters. So it would be 10 meters by 3 meters. So it's basically just plugging these things together like Legos. and then you have a computer that you feed the background image to, and it's matched to the camera, it basically just projects this giant image. And as the camera moves, the background updates, or you can choose, there's a whole bunch of things you can do with these giant LED screens in terms of what's behind the characters. Um, they can be static, they can move, depending upon how the camera's moving. It's, it's very fun to play with, and you'll completely enjoy it. The downside of using the giant LED screens is that they are very expensive. So, and the other downside of using an LED screen is when you're recording the image on your camera. So let's say I have my Black Magic Ursa, and I'm looking through it, I see my character, and then behind him, I see the giant LED screen with whatever's supposed to be behind him. Well, the interesting thing is that's actually real. So let's say that I get to post-production, and when I'm looking at the final footage, I really wish that the daytime scene I have behind my actors was actually a nighttime scene. If it was a shot on green screen, I could make that change in a matter of minutes. I could change the digital background, I could re-render the images, and it would be just like I'd shot it with the right background on the day. But when you're shooting with a giant LED screen, it's just like the real world. You actually have actual, you've shot what you shot, and getting rid of that background is a drag because it's actually part of you recorded it at exactly the same time as you recorded your actors there's no green screen, and there's no way to change that digital background because it's fixed. You have to do you would have to do all kinds of gymnastics to make that change. So that's kind of the biggest downside of an LED screen, aside from the expense, is that once you shoot something using a giant LED screen behind your actor, it's shot just like you've shot it in the real world. You're not going to be making changes to it after the fact cheaply and easily. So the other thing I would mention is this: when you're shooting, as you get closer to the giant LED screen, so if your actor is 20 feet away from the LED screen, then the pixels on the giant LED screen are likely not going to be visible, right? But the closer the actor and the camera the closer the camera gets to that screen, the more likely it is that it's going to see that it's not actually a real world environment. It is actually little pixels, and little, just like a TV screen if you get too close to it. So that represents kind of a problem, because it means that you may have to have a very, very, very large screen in some cases to shoot some of the scenes in your project. The good news is the LED screens and LED, just like green screen in studios, can be rented. So you can decide to use LED screens to shoot your projects or some of the scenes in your projects when you feel like it, just by choosing to rent a studio that actually provides those kind of LED screens as one of the things that it rents. And so you can start shooting on green screen, and then you can fade to doing some with LED, and then you can fade back to doing just green screen if you want. The same hardware pretty much is used for both sets of things. There is some additional hardware required for shooting on green screen, but often it will come with the rental. So it's something to think about. You can save time in post-production as well. When you're shooting 4K projects, generally the output, what's rendered, is simply time-coded, perfectly composited video that you just hand to your editors, who use it to cut together your film or television show. If the editor or director wishes, they can re-render and recomposite the backgrounds, just like I said before. If you shot the actors in a daylight environment and you wish it had been a nighttime environment, or you put them in one particular restaurant and now you want to change the restaurant to a different kind of restaurant, you can replace those backgrounds because you shot it on green screen. You can just re-render the backgrounds using the Unreal Engine to generate and recomposite the live actors. If you are smart, you will start your editing process, since you're on a green screen stage anyway. You'll probably start your editing process actually during production. So you won't wait till the end of the show to start editing. You'll be editing, the first day's footage will start being cut together at the end of the first day. And so by the time you're done with the film, you'll pretty much have a rough cut done. And that means that if you've had any changes that you wanted to make, or you wanted to go back and reshoot anything, it would be really easy because you're standing on the same green screen you used to shoot the original. Now, I want to just sort of go back over the equipment that you need. The first thing you need is a virtual production computer. This is not just a fast gaming workstation. So a lot of people think I'm just going to go buy a fast gaming station, since the tool that I'm using to render the environments is the Unreal Engine gaming application. Then I could just run basically a video game workstation. But you can't, because your video game computers are designed to render backgrounds really quickly and render gameplay really quickly. But a virtual production computer has to be configured to actually run the Unreal Engine, accept and record tracking data from the camera tracking applications. It needs to be able to output video, which means it has to be SMPTE and Genlock content. If you don't know what that means, you can look those things up, but basically it means your workstation actually has to be designed to create final video output. The machine needs to be very fast, not just in rendering your content, but storing the content. So your hard drives have to be very, very fast as well. It needs to be very, very robust and tough, because generally speaking, virtual production computers move a lot, because you're going from soundstage to soundstage to soundstage to soundstage. And as you know, you really don't want to be down during production days. So it has to be tolerant to being moved a great deal. It has to be in the right kind of cases, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It also needs to be able to have a backup solution, so that if something gets changed or something gets broken, you can restore it to when it was working. So you can expect to spend about 20K per computer for those things. And you need one per camera. So if you're doing a 2-camera shoot, you're going to need probably 2 virtual production computers. You need camera matching software. I talked to you about Moses and InCam. These are the things that make the movement of the camera in the real world control a camera inside the Unreal Engine environment. And every lens that you use on that camera needs to be calibrated for focus, for lens focus, as well as zoom. And the reason that that's necessary is that it turns out lenses aren't perfect. Lenses on your cameras aren't perfect. And so you need to make sure that if there's any distortion in the lens at all, the Unreal Engine actually has exactly the same distortion, so that you don't see weird behaviors. So that the camera inside the Unreal Engine and it's being tracked by the camera is 100% like the camera that's on the real world. So it creates a perfect match. Otherwise, you'll be able to see, little bits of green appear around your characters from time to time. You do this one time per lens, generally speaking, and you're going to spend about $50,000 per camera matching per camera, because each camera needs its own camera tracking system. Let's see. If you take a look at your camera, you can use ARRI or Red or Blackmagic or the Blackmagic Design Ursa Mini Pro 4.6Ks. A lot of people use that because Blackmagic cameras are very robust and they're very cost effective. You do need to attach a camera cage around the camera, because the camera attached to the camera as well, it has to be the camera tracking software, right? So it's not just the camera. You have to actually you have to get a cage that you put around the camera that you can bolt stuff to. And then you can expect to spend about $10,000 per camera with lenses. When you talk about LED screens, you can choose to shoot television with LED screens. That's as good or better than you shoot. You can choose to shoot film and television on green screen as well or better than you shoot with LED screens. But if you actually want to have LED screens, it certainly can be fast, because it makes lighting really, really, really quick. And I tell you what, actors, directors, other folks really love them. It's just, they really, really, it's like being there. You can also rent LED screen studios, so you don't have to actually buy the LED screens. You can just choose to rent them when you need them. If you do want to buy an LED screen, you're going to plan to spend, like, let's call it $400,000 for a 10 meter by 3 meter or a 30 foot by 9 foot set of panels. And it's going to vary wildly based upon the manufacturer of the LEDs, the screen resolution, the configuration. Like, do you want to do one that has a bend, one that's sort of a cove or corner, it's got basically a corner? Do you want to have LED screens above the stage or on the floor of the stage? Those kinds of, the costs go up based upon those kinds of things. You're going to need to have lighting, tripods, cables, and peripherals. You can rent lots of those things, but you may choose to buy a lot of them as well. And you can expect to spend sort of 20K on that kind of stuff, although you can certainly spend more. So when we talk about training, support, and maintenance, when you as a producer, your director, your DPs, your editors, and those you want to hire as operators all need to get trained to use the setup, and you need support as you use it. So generally, if you buy a system, you're going to go ahead and decide to get training to use it as well. because and really you want them to teach you to use the equipment that you've actually purchased, so that you can confirm that it's working and you can confirm that you know how to use the stuff you actually bought. Going to a class is good, but the problem is that what they use in the classroom environment may not be what you would actually be using on your particular set. And you can go ahead and assume, to get all of the equipment, to get all of the training and all this stuff together, you're going to end up spending about $300,000 for a 2-camera system. Now, the other if you decide to purchase this system, what a lot of people do in order to help fund the cost is, and after they purchase it to shoot projects that they want to shoot, but then they also rent the system out, um, or sell themselves and their team to do production for hire projects with people. So you'll notice a lot of people that purchase these systems are also available. You can hire them to actually shoot your projects for you. So we'll talk about that in a moment. So a question that often gets asked is, can you rent a virtual production system from someone? If you can find somebody that's got a system and they're willing to trust you with it, you can certainly choose to rent the system. In theory, that it's, you have to find that guy. In theory, you can choose to rent each of the individual components from multiple vendors, and then you can sort of assemble a production environment. But generally, if you're renting all of the components, the price you're going to pay is going to be at least $10,000 per day. It's just how rentals work. Generally speaking, even if you do decide to rent the rest of the resources, like you decide to rent camera tracking systems by the day, you decide to rent the greens, all the, let's see, even if you decide to rent the camera tracking systems, you decide to rent the cameras, you decide to rent the lights, as well as a green screen studio, chances are good you're going to want to spend money on the virtual production workstation, because that's where you're going to load the environments that you plan to shoot. So as you go through the development and pre-production process, you'll be working on the virtual production workstation to load the environment, set your camera positions for when you're actually during the shoot, and so that you can pre-render things to see what environments are going to look like before you actually get to set. If you're new to virtual production and your team has time to train with the hardware and software, you're going to be renting it for a long time. It might be, if you want to build a system and then rent it so you can train yourself and your team on how to use it, by the time you've done that rental, you're going to end up spending as much as if you'd actually purchased a system. So you might as well buy the system outright. And remember that I mentioned in passing, because I think people in independent film often don't remember, you can lease to buy. You don't have to actually pay for things outright. You can actually say, I want to lease to buy this stuff. There are leasing companies that you can go to and say, I want to spend $300,000 on this thing, and I've got a good credit rating, and I would like to just go ahead and set up a leasing agreement. And you might pay for a 2-camera system, you might pay $6K to $9K a month for 3 years, and it will cover 100% of your costs. Or if you want to just get a single camera virtual production system, you might spend as little as $3,000 a month. So you can decide, how you can rent systems, or you can choose to buy them outright, or you can choose to do a lease to buy solution so that you have the option of spending a fixed amount of money per month. And one more thing I would mention, if you're going to be shooting TV projects, you're almost always going to be purchasing the software, because it's the most cost of, if you're going to be shooting 10 episodes of something, you want to be able to have access to the equipment whenever you need it, and you want to make sure that it's the same equipment from day to day to day to day. And the easiest way to do that is to use the same equipment to shoot. So I want to talk for just a quick second about green screen sound stages. When you're renting green screen sound stages, you want to choose ones that are pre-lit, come with a lighting grid, full power and air conditioning. And if you can, get one that's large and has 3 or 4 green screen walls, provides all cast and crew amenities so nobody has to leave, including dressing rooms and office areas, and one that offers lighting and grip equipment for rent, because you save a lot of money on every production. Large green screen sound stages start about $2,000 per day, which is cheaper than real world fully dressed locations. If you budget to pay $5 to $10K per day for location rental on your virtual production projects, complete with all the required lighting, dolly, and other equipment that you need, you'll probably be in the right ballpark. It's relatively inexpensive to acquire the locations that you need. I want to mention that many green screen sound stages now offer LED panels as well. So you don't really have to choose between LED and green screen, you can get both. So sort of here's an example of a green screen. You can see sort of stage shoot date is 1850 for 10 hours. Here's another one, $95 an hour, 4-hour minimum. You can see that they've got lights already set up. It's all, you know, a large green screen environment. And then we can go to this one that actually has LED panels, right? Large green screen environment, and then LED panels, just you can use for lighting, or, you know, they probably have other ones you can also rent that you could just use for as a giant background. So another question is, can I hire a studio to do virtual production for me? Yes. Generally speaking, you're going to be spending $10,000 to $20,000 per day, including prep days, which will likely be a week or more for a feature film. And you will get the green screen environment, all the equipment, perhaps computer operators, and you're going to provide the virtual production. You are going to provide the virtual production supervisor, the three-dimensional models, and you're going to pay extra for lighting and rentals and consulting services. By the time you cover the prep days, generally you've paid enough to own the hardware that you need to shoot your project. So you might just as well go ahead and buy the equipment. If you're shooting a TV series, you will want to own the equipment to reduce costs and to guarantee that every episode looks exactly the same. So if you're going to be doing production on especially more than one project, owning a system and training up your team probably is going to cost less than hiring a stage and a VP crew to work for you to actually produce the project. So if you are capable, and if you have a good team, it's probably better for you to purchase a system. If you don't have that kind of support, then you are going to want to hire a studio like LA Castle or somebody to work with you to produce your project. I wanted to mention that I talked previously about purchasing three-dimensional environments. The Unreal Engine has thousands of sort of real world environments to choose from, right? And when you get a chance, you can just literally go to the Unreal Engine and you can sort of click on, start looking through the environments one by one. You can search for them by keywords like hotel room, etc. And you can see how real or not real they look. So I can, I could use this as a shooting environment. I could make it so that somebody walked through one of those doors and sat down in the chair that's next to the window, and literally they'd be walking on a green screen and sitting on a little green stool, but it would look real. And again, I can modify all these environments. And let's see. Right? And I can change the lighting on any of them. Cool. Now, those are kind of mundane environments. Go ahead. We can also look at sort of more exciting environments. Right. Now, I want to mention in passing, in the Unreal Engine, you can have fog. You can also have rain. You can also have hail. You can have snow. You can have the wind blowing, literally blowing digital tumbleweeds through your environment, right? So this particular one shows fog. If I could make it so that when somebody was walking through this environment, they became more visible as they approached the camera. They could come out of the fog. If I go to I could have somebody walk down the street. I could have them enter any of the doors. They have famous locations all over the place. And I could use and some environments have other environments. Like you notice that this particular environment, it has this external environment, and I can actually go into these rooms and I will find the columns, I will find dishes, I will find tables, I will find chairs. So the environments are as complex or as simple as you want them to be. Let's see. Oh, I want to do the Bay Bridge one, and then we'll stop looking at these guys. Okay, so if I go and I dive into, if I want, I can choose to hire people to create environments for me. Upwork and Guru have all of these kinds of modelers, and you can go ahead, and they come from all over the world. And uh, so how much you pay them has a lot to do with just what you've decided that you want to pay for a particular model, right? So these are custom models, and they can be as detailed or not detailed as you want them to be. And so I didn't forget to mention these things, but I thought I might have forgotten to. But I did mention that we can do 3D stunt doubles, and um, so you can literally take a lead actor and you can send them to someplace and have them scanned and turned into a digital character. You can hire, or alternatively, you can give photographs of the actor to a 3D modeler who can actually create something that's a close approximation of that particular character. Um, and you really have to determine how realistic the character has to be for your particular application. I mean, if you're just going to shoot the guy, then you don't necessarily need to make, you might on the guy might be, um, uh, the real actor all the way up until the time you actually shoot him in the head, in which case, after that point, he could be a digital character and his head might not be easy to actually even see. So that's always an option. We also, there's this thing that the Unreal Engine has invested in creating a lot of digital humans, and they've created this thing called the metahuman. And when you get a chance, just Google Unreal Engine metahuman, and you'll see that they have developed a system that lets you create three-dimensional humans that are ready to animate in a matter of minutes. So it's a tool for actually creating photorealistic humans, right? And if I go ahead and I click watch the video,
what a synthetic human could be. I've got state-of-the-art real-time graphics and an unprecedented level of detail in my eyes, skin, and hair. Cool, right? But I'm more than just a collection of fancy pixels. I'm actually being driven by a real human actress and her dynamic motion capture through Unreal Engine. So what are you waiting for? Come meet me at the Vicon booth and see for yourself.
right? So when you get a chance, go Google the Unreal Engine, and you can actually see all of the, you can go ahead and see all of the different kinds of characters that you can create, and you can create an unlimited number. And once again, you can hire people to do the work for you while you watch them, or you can spend as much time as you like messing around with the tools and creating them yourselves. Now, the one other thing I forgot to mention is that you can shoot cartoons using virtual production tools as well. You can, if you add motion capture hardware, you can animate your digital characters in real time using live actors, as you just heard from in that particular commercial, or you can choose to animate characters that don't look the least bit human, people that look like Shaggy and Scooby and Fred and Velma, Daphne on Scooby Doo, and how real the character looks and how real the rendering is totally up to you. So you can shoot animated features using this tool set as well. For example, you can check out Safari. This is a kids TV show that shot inside the Unreal Engine, right? And in this particular case, there's no compositing. It's actually, you don't actually, you shoot this entire thing inside the Unreal Engine. There's no actor on green screen. Everything is animated either by virtual puppeteers or by people that are um, humans that are wearing motion tracking suits. So that would be an additional expense, but I'm saying the same fundamental technology and toolkits that you use for shooting live films, you can use for shooting animated films as well. This basically talks about, it compares a 15 character horror film shot in two rural farm locations versus one green screen soundstage here in LA for $10,000 per day for 30 days. And it assumes that somebody is purchasing a $300,000 two-camera virtual production system, and it's on a lease to buy basis, and they're going to spend 3 months using the workstations for this particular project. So they're basically paying $10K a month for the use of that particular system, which they may have rented from somebody else in theory, or they purchased and they're prorating the cost for this particular film. And instead of spending $5.4 million, they end up spending $3.243 million. It is, and that includes the cost that you have to add for a virtual production supervisor, 4 modelers, and 2 VP machine operators to the budget. And this is if I had a project that had more locations or more setups, more performers, more crew, more special effects, I would see an even bigger change. If I were shooting something that was theoretically set in Manhattan, and had was something like, let's see, what would be a good, um, just about, I can't think of a single thing you could shoot in Manhattan that wouldn't be really expensive. Let's say I was shooting the show, the movie Annie, right? So I have a real girl, and I have Daddy Warbucks, and we're going all over the city of New York. I could shoot. I mean, that's a really expensive project because you're shooting in all these locations. There's big dance routines, da 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 da. I could really significantly reduce the cost of that project because I would be literally keeping everybody on a soundstage and then just loading different environments for them to dance and to perform in. And I might have spent some on real props, like real chairs for them to sit in, or real dining tables for them to sit at, or real dogs. But the point is, I would be saving a lot of money on all of the other locations and travel and so forth. Cool. All right. I think that really covers all the stuff that I want to talk about. I hope you had an interesting time listening to the presentation, and I hope that some of the resources and information that I talked about prove interesting to you, and give you some new options going forward. I think it's the most important thing for me is knowing that you understand this technology is out there, because if you may or may not choose to use it. It may or may not be a perfect fit for your project, but other people are using it. And it means that if you're going to be working in the entertainment industry, if you're going to be producing and funding projects, you're going to be creating this content using this tool set, or you're going to be working and competing against people that are using this tool set. And it's going to have an impact on what budgets are for films. Like something that used to cost $1 million might end up costing $500,000 to produce. Something that costs $10 million to produce might cost $3 million to produce. So it's going to have an impact on everybody's budgets in terms of making them lower. It's going to make some projects that were impossible to produce much, much less expensive to produce. And I think when you go onto the Unreal, one of the most interesting things you can do is go onto the Unreal Engine Marketplace. Just Google Unreal Engine Marketplace and start looking at the three-dimensional environments that they have. And you'll see how many, there are literally thousands of digital locations that you can use. So, and it may be the case that you decide you do want to hire a company to do the virtual production for you. And, you can actually work with them to develop your budgets and your shooting schedules and so forth. So I want you to be aware of the technology, because I think it is going to be a part of your future, guaranteed, if you're going to be working in the entertainment industry. Cool. Thank you so much for hanging out with me this evening, and I hope that you have an excellent evening. If I didn't get to your question, do feel free to send me an email. I'm always available, and I look forward to hearing from you. Okay? All right. Take care, you guys.